Incoming transmission from the future. Vancouver AI Community Meetup.
Catherine Warren has been a member of this community for the last year. It's so cool to reconnect with you, Catherine. We knew each other during the Web 2.0 days. She's a powerhouse and has been a big part of the economic development, technology communities here in British Columbia for a good long time. Pixel Wizard, do you need David Wang to help you out? Yeah. David Wang, please report to the stage. Don't leave until the snickerdoodles are served. Let me tell you, slapped cookies, snickerdoodles in the house.
Okay for now.
So it's just gonna be a little noisy here while people grab beers and transition. Kevin is gonna get locked and loaded. You good?
Yeah.
Not you. Our graphics have always been fucking awesome, but they just got another major up level. This guy right over here, David Wang, has taken over as our art director and has completely expanded our capabilities. So David, thanks so much, bro. It's been great having you helping out, man. Thank you. Catherine Warren, who knows Catherine? Yeah, a couple friends out here. Thank you so much for pulling this together. I fucking hate panels, and I went there to support you, Kay, and Kevin. We're all in the same thing. And you introduced me to Liz, whose work is amazing, and made me realize you shouldn't judge shit. You know, you shouldn't you should definitely approach every single thing with an open mind, because this is some good shit. So thank you for coming here. It's not easy to pull 4 or 5 people together in the same room at the same time. Catherine Warren.
Welcome, everyone, and especially welcome to our newbies here.
Thanks.
It's really great to see so many new people in the room, and I appreciate very much being together in one of the world's greenest cities, an AI powerhouse, also talking about something that is very much...
Hey, Catherine, your mic sucks.
Thank you. So much better. And I really appreciate the fact that we're here in a creative economic sector as well. So just by way of background, Vancouver is a global powerhouse when it comes to media and entertainment. We're also the home of Adbusters, Greenpeace, and many other, let's say, action-oriented media and activist organizations. So we are very much right place, right time to be having a conversation at the intersection of artificial intelligence, sustainability, and the creative economy. And I'm very happy to be here with 3 entertainment thought leaders. And we are going to hear more from our panelists in a minute. And then I also want to thank Anthony for convening us on the unceded territories of Squamish Nation. I am so grateful to be here, and magic happens when you convene with purpose. So thank you so much, Anthony. As Chris mentioned, I'm your moderator, Catherine Warren. I'm the founder and president of Fan Trust, and we are celebrating our 25th anniversary this fall at the intersection of innovation, entertainment, and economic development. And, you know, thinking back, since about 2016, innovation in these areas has tended to mean artificial intelligence, sustainability, and inclusion. So we'll be talking a bit about those as innovations. And my own background in climate physics actually launched me on this trajectory many years ago, and a commitment to climate leadership. And much later in my career as CEO of Vancouver Economic Commission, I had the privilege to oversee our film commission and also do a lot of work in the circular and green economy. And what I learned from that is that, you know, you can do well by doing good, and that these things aren't mutually exclusive. So to work in sustainability does not take away from the bottom line, and in fact, it can contribute to new revenues, relationships, and reach. So Somewhat later, I was recruited by the mayor of the city of Edmonton to come out to Alberta's capital, and there I launched an ethical artificial intelligence accelerator fund, and we focused on AI for social good. So we're going to be talking a bit about that and where sustainability and the green economy fits in to things like the Sustainable Development Goals. So let's get into our topic at a high level, and then I will introduce our panelists, but I thought I'd do just a little bit of table setting before we turn it over to our experts. I really see AI as a double-edged sword, or maybe even an AK-47. It is ubiquitous, it is powerful, and it is very dangerous in the wrong hands. And when it comes to the climate emergency, we are faced with a paradox. On the one hand, AI, of course, promises to help us solve a climate crisis of our own making. But on the other hand, AI's insatiable energy consumption could just as easily push us past the brink. So it's sort of a battle that's going on there. But the truth is, we don't need intelligence, human or artificial, to address the climate emergency, right? Any dum-dum can do it. We know exactly what to do. We get off carbon, full stop. We've known this since the 80s, and that was a gentler time. It was a time when we actually had a lot more time to do something about it. And it was a time when all the facts already known to women were out there for the taking. The research was in the 80s. So this is not, in fact, an intelligence problem at all. It's a problem of political will. And so, put simply, can artificial intelligence fix human idiocy? Or have we, with all of our intelligence, just created a smart machine in our own image, essentially another energy monster? Machines, they are just like us. So at COP30 this month, AI moved for the first time from the sidelines to the front lines. And the conference highlighted the potential to do things like cut emissions, harness energy and water sustainably, and warn communities about the impact of climate threats. As if we needed any more warnings, but there you go. But real concerns still remain. There are no global standards to measure or control AI's carbon footprint, or water, or energy. And AI-driven climate misinformation is exploding. So we're going to talk a bit about that. And I guess my question for all of you as you listen to our panelists is, will AI help us tackle ourselves and be the better person? What role can AI and the media industry play in saving the planet? And we are about to find out from our expert panelists, Kay Bartigo, and she is the Director of Marketing Communications at the Montreal AI Ethics Institute. Welcome, Kay. So happy to see you again.
Thank you, Catherine.
Kevin Friel, you know Kevin as the man behind the machine, but he's here today as an AI filmmaker and video producer. And then we have Liz Marshall, filmmaker of Liz Mars Productions. Welcome, Liz. And I'd like to start with you, Kay. You mentioned moments ago when you introduced Amanda that your organization just released a new report. Tell us about your work at the Institute and your research findings as they relate to both entertainment and sustainability.
Thank you so much, Catherine. So I'm the Global Marketing Director for the Montreal AI Ethics Institute. Earlier this month, we published the State of AI Ethics Report. It basically covers various sectoral applications of AI, from sustainability to healthcare, military, and entertainment, and everything in between. So please read it, download it, it's free. If you go to montrealethics.ai, you can find a report. But I want to tie back to a point that you made, Catherine, before I dive in a little bit further. So when we were prepping for this particular panel, I was reminded by biologist Edward Wilson, who argues that the problem with humanity is that we have Paleolithic emotions with medieval institutions and godlike technology. And when we examine, right, the intersection of AI and climate change, the problem is not theoretical. As Catherine mentioned, it's very political. It's about political will. But moreover, it's also existential. So again, going back to the report, it was quite a feat to put it together. We had 58 contributors, including Amanda. That's 48 essays across 17 chapters. It was an enormous effort. But overall, what we found is a growing power gap between the people creating AI technologies and the policies around AI. And on the other side of it are the people using it on the ground, particularly the people feeling its adverse consequences. And public policy, as I was, again, thinking about this in this context, should really protect the most vulnerable members of the population. Policy fails when people who are most affected, again, who have to live with the consequences, are not included in conversations that will affect their lives, particularly public policy conversations, and especially so when public policy consultations are mostly theater. So I think that and I'll echo my colleague Renji Butalid, who's a co-founder of the Institute. We failed to implement thoughtfully if we rush to deploy new technologies. And for example, and just to kind of ground this conversation, according to the MIT Technology Review, 5-second videos produced by new Gen AI models use 3.4 million joules. That's more than 700 times the energy required to generate a high-quality image. This is equivalent to riding 61 kilometers on an e-bike, or speaking of microwaves, running a microwave for over an hour. And that's just for a 5-second video. Of course, these numbers are estimates because it's a black box. We don't really know what the real numbers are. Because AI companies are not transparent and forthcoming with their energy usage. So these estimates don't capture how we'll use AI in the near future. So really, in many ways, when we think about it, right now is probably the smallest footprint we'll ever have when it comes to AI use of energy and water consumption. So we're not even looking at how burdensome AI can really be on local power grids or local wastewater facilities. By 2028, researchers estimate the power going to AI-specific purposes can increase to 326 terawatt hours per year, which is comparable to the annual power usage of certain countries. To put in perspective, 326 terawatt hours generates the same emissions as driving over 300 billion miles. That's over 1,600 round trips from Earth to the sun. In the recent COP30, which just wrapped up earlier this month, what we've seen is a slew of broken promises. Nations around the world have failed miserably in stabilizing the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So now climate experts are saying it's inevitable that global temperatures will exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is the limit that we had set for ourselves several years ago. But what is the significance of exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius? According to the Environmental and Energy Study Institute, this means more frequent and intense heat waves, wildfires, storms, and floods. This means nearly 1 billion people will be exposed to water stress and desertification, which is really intense to think about. 63 billion in adaptation and residual damages to major crops. It will put 14% of the world's species at risk of extinction. About 24% more people would face flooding compared to historical levels. Coral reefs would decline by 70 to 90%. Building data centers en masse will only accelerate global warming. What we're seeing in governance is the infrastructure isn't ready. The literacy isn't there, and the participation mechanisms are broken. We're moving too fast to ask the right questions about deployment, consequences, and accountability. Each new investment cements the current trajectory unless equity and justice are built in by design, and we truly believe that we can do that if we have the will to do so. Humanity is at a crossroads, and how we proceed will determine whether we're doomed or redeemed.
Very, very sobering and well said. And, you know, everyone in the room here is here because you care about this topic. And, you know, we're early enough in AI, still a relatively new technology, that if we put it under this kind of scrutiny and apply policy to it, we can turn this around. The other thing that you made me realize is that, you know, we've been, even without AI, creating a lot of garbage videos using our own digital footprint as humans, and we never put that under the kind of spotlight that I think AI is going under. So maybe it's time to also look at the stuff that we are creating ourselves. And the other thing, of course, is AI is now embedded. It's stealth. It's in almost every tool we use. So with that, I would like to turn over to you, Kevin, and ask you, as an AI filmmaker who's using these new tools every day, how are you keeping it green? How much of what you're using has what I would think of as like stealth or embedded AI versus intentional AI?
First of all, I want to welcome you all to my living room here. Would you like some snacks? There's some nice drinks at the back. When this whole sort of, you know, redux of our conversation that we had at the Sustainable Production Forum a few weeks ago, I was blown away by the diversity of information and experiences, and the conclusion that really, you know, hit a focal point in the middle. And I'm really excited to, you know, find new information, new fulcrums in that, and of course with all of you as well. In terms of the compute problem in production, compute in creating content is not a new problem. What we're facing right now is an exponential scale of compute that we have never seen in an exponential scale of creating content, not only by, you know, established firms such as visual effects companies or large movie studios or perhaps even indie producers, but the everyday person, by virtue of the speed of our internet now, allows one-for-one access to incredible amounts of compute that we have never had access to before. And that creates an interesting paradigm in that, those of us that have been living and breathing GPU compute for, 15 to 20 years, if you were an early adopter for it, we saw this coming in a lot of ways. We've had to deal with power management. We've had to deal with cooling all along. Before, water cooling was really sort of affordable and attainable on the scale of render farms that we would have. We were maxing out GPUs in the late 2000s in this sense. So this is something that has arrived at such a scale that nobody was really prepared for, except for a few of us that were lucky to see it early in the front lines. So all of that to say that there's a two-pronged approach and problem and quandary that we have in terms of production's relationship to compute. And first, the first notion is the compute that we can control, and that's local. We can use efficient code. We can use efficient compute. One of the parts that I really wanted to introduce into this conversation tonight is efficiency of compute itself. The design of the efficiency of compute is deeply problematic in GPUs. And I hear some yeses, people who are like really in the weeds on that. Can you give a hell yeah on that? Right? We have one major player who is providing compute on the GPU scale to everyone. The $5 trillion elephant in the room, NVIDIA. And the reason that they have such clout is it's not just hardware design, but they have embedded their software so well and so deeply into being the only compute platform that is accessible and reasonable at these at-scale and local compute processes. They're the only game in town. There are other hardware vendors, but no one wants to touch their software because it just can't, NVIDIA has a 20-year lead on hardware and software interface to make all of these things happen. So when we look at that approach, we look at alternative ways of computing. And we've done that already on the CPU side. For instance, when Intel was ruling everything and AMD came up and beat them by creating better compute for cheaper, for less power, and for less heat output. And then ARM came along and with partnerships with Snapdragon and with Apple have revolutionized CPU compute and now systems on a chip where you can do, equivalent to NVIDIA 4090 compute at 40 watts, whereas an NVIDIA 4090, hits 500 watts at times, right? We need that exact same paradigm to happen on the GPU side. Does that sound about reasonable? And we really have an amazing opportunity as Canadians to actually lead that. We have so much history in companies like Nortel and Telesat and BlackBerry, where we have introduced real paradigm changes in technology in the world. And there's companies that I'm aware of in my hometown in Ottawa that made all of the car OSs for Ford for years and years and years. This is not it's a big thing to ask, but we have history in doing it before, and the people are here, right? So that's the big sort of lofty thing that we need to start working towards. And I'm planting that early because I want that to happen, not only for the environment, but for us as, a nation building initiative, and all the partnerships for that to come on board with. And what that would allow is much more control of local compute. Therefore, less heat, less power, less dependency on a single provider to empower all of these things and actually have some healthy competition start to happen. Because right now, we can control local compute by having a set amount of servers, a set amount of GPUs, and a set amount of cooling at any moment. But we're always going to have an overrun, and we have to run scurrying to Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, or AWS, really. And we have no idea which AWS cluster we're truly pulling from, right? They say that they have more environmental clusters, but are they actually really provisioning us that 100% of the time? So, that sort of sense of compute helplessness and the fundamental design of compute itself is the single biggest paradigm that I think that we as a society, as a species, need to take a look at. Because compute is starting to be just as important as hydro and electricity and food and all the things that we hold as a society. It runs everything. So that is my fundamental argument. It's compute. We need to solve compute design in a major and incredible way if we're going to make anything good out of this.
Didn't hear anything about your entertainment. We'll have to get to that next. Yeah, but also I think it's pretty cute that you think 20 years is a long time in computing. All right, so Liz, I am turning it over to you. You can use this microphone if that one isn't working.
Check.
Oh, it's working.
Hello.
Amazing. Okay, so Liz,
I understood probably half of what you said. Yeah.
You are a career documentary filmmaker, and you are revisiting a topic that was very powerful to you some time ago, and you're giving it a whole new lens. So I would like you to tell our audience about your first documentary on this topic and now what you're doing in 2025-6 plus.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hey, Chris. Thanks for initiating. Chris was a fan of this panel a few weeks ago. We were in a room speaking to film and television industry specialists. Everyone cares about the environment. Can I get a raise of hands? Who's an environmentalist here? Who cares about the climate? Who cares about water, earth, air, trees? Yay! That's most of us. Okay. So yes, I am embarking on a new epic feature documentary currently. I'm at the, I would call it phase 1 development stage, and it is a revisiting of a very big subject matter. So 15 years ago, my very first feature-length documentary is called Water on the Table. And I was so privileged to be able to shadow and witness and follow the tremendous work of Canadian Maud Barlow when she was in her appointment at the United Nations as the water advisor to the president of the General Assembly. And her mission was really about enshrining water justice. So the protection of water from the greed and exploitation of the so-called free market of the private sector. Which is for profit. And water justice...
Liz, your mic is kind of shaky. I'm going to switch this one in.
Water justice, the ethos of water justice is essentially that water belongs to the public commons. It belongs to the earth. It belongs to future generations. It belongs to all species. It belongs to nature. And it belongs exactly where nature put the water. It should not be diverted, drained, moved, exported, because we know there's evidence to back it up that it creates drought and desertification. So water justice is something that I became extremely passionate about when I made Water on the Table 15 years ago. And so fast forward to now, I'm asking the question, is AI draining this world for another? Now, that's a big meta question that I really look forward to going really deep, because the intersection of AI data center expansion and water use is really an intersection. It's like an epicenter containing many ethical questions, many unfolding big questions that we don't know the answers to yet either. But there's a lot of data coming in. We know that it's estimated that by 2027, data centers will guzzle up 1.7 trillion gallons of water per year. When we look at this magnificent country, Canada, Turtle Island, we know that we are blessed. We have 20% of the world's fresh water, yet only 7% of that is renewable. So we're living in a climate emergency. There's no argument, no debate. And we have raging forest fires in this country. We have drought. There are 36 Indigenous nations that are still living without drinkable, potable, clean water. That's a reality. That is a human rights horrible, shameful issue that we have not solved yet. And so I guess really I'm here kind of repping water, I'm repping the air, I'm repping trees and earth and power to the people. I'm also a nerd. I made a documentary, it was released in 2020. It's called Meet the Future. That's MEAT, Meet the Future. It's all about human ingenuity. It's about cultivated meat. It's about a solution. It's using technology, in this case, food technology, to solve one of the biggest climate issues of this planet, which is animal agriculture. So I am not in any way, shape, or form like a full-on like tech resistor, or definitely not a Luddite. But I've kind of thought about, you know, who am I right now in the world? What are my values? What the fuck is going on? Everything's happening so quickly. There's the rise of fascism happening at a crazy pace, and it's been very discombobulating. And we're all kind of trying to get our balance, find our voice within that, and find meaning and purpose around ways to move forward. The 4 pillars that I have kind of come up with, CASC, that's curiosity, awareness, skepticism, and caution. That's specifically about AI. So the awe and wonder, the romance stage, you know, leaning into this sort of like, oh, wow, this is like mind-bending fascination, that whole thing. That will continue, but I think we're now in a more pragmatic stage where we can talk statistics, we can talk pragmatically about the value systems that that are embodied here. So when I focus this new documentary on the intersection of AI data center expansion or sprawl or growth or whatever you want to call it, and water use, you know, for example, the Great Lake Basin is kind of like a ground zero. It's like an epicenter of growth, progress, so-called progress. That is scary. And of course, Indigenous ways of understanding the earth, Indigenous ways of knowing, and Indigenous nations do not recognize colonial boundaries, and they certainly do not say, you know, that's our water or our land or your land. No, it belongs to all of us. And if we are truly environmentally conscious, if we care about this planet and water needs to be, it's the sacred lifeblood of this earth, then we really need to look very critically at this issue and figure out a way forward. I have a lot more to say. I'll end just by saying that the resistance has arrived. We can look to models right now in Georgia, Indianapolis, and what was the other, Virginia? Anyways, talking about Georgia, there's a tremendous community resistance, and it's been very effective. In fact, there are now moratoriums on new data centers. So people have power. We have to remember that. And it's coming here. And I am going to be on the ground witnessing the unfolding of the resistance.
Thank goodness for storytelling activism and your work, Liz. Thank you so much. I think investigating these themes while they're unfolding, this kind of real-time documentary filmmaking, is absolutely critical. You're making a difference in the moment when people can do something about the problem. What we've just learned from Liz is that these machines are very thirsty. They are thirsty, thirsty machines at a time when many people in the world are very parched. And so we're not only working hand in glove with artificial intelligence to solve problems like the climate crisis, but AI is, in a sense, a rival for the very human resources that we need for our survival. So quick show of hands in our audience. How many of you think about the carbon cost when you query ChatGPT? So, okay. A few of you do. And that's pretty good because Vancouver, so I would expect that a few of you would. I believe it's something like 0.1 gram per prompt. And now there are a lot of us with a conscience in this room, but the question for me is, and I'm going to turn this over to our panelists, where is the corporate responsibility around that? So we're taking individual responsibility. Where is the corporate responsibility? The AI carbon costs of training these models and the role that corporations can and must play in greening what I'll call the AI grid. So Kay, I thought I wanted to get the audience to hear from you what your report has to say about corporate responsibility.
Okay, so I think when we talk about corporate responsibility, it's a little bit ironic for me because when you think about the history of capitalism, when have corporations ever been intrinsically motivated to uphold human rights? This is a very important question to ask because truly, when you think about it, policy is one of the biggest ways to get corporations to actually do the right thing. Corporations are very singular in their purpose. They are there to make money. It's about profit, right? So when we're talking about corporate responsibility, to me, what comes to mind is actually really the immense work, like groundwork that has been laid by the labor movement, and in terms of motivating public policy that supports human rights in general, but also protection for the environment. And I think in this age of AI, we need to really be asking ourselves, okay, well, if corporations were, let's say, hypothetically speaking, interested in actually upholding, corporate responsibility, then why is AI a technology that is essentially built on theft? So, yeah, it's a good question, right? Ultimately, that's the pink elephant in the room that we're not really addressing, is that the entire thing is built on theft. there's a lot of arguments happening now in terms of, IP, I own this IP, you can't use this IP. But also folks, real people who've been affected by theft, and yet there's no protections existing. The political will isn't really there, maybe a little bit, but it's something that I feel, again, it's more of an existential question. I feel like Liz would have a bit of maybe something to add.
Are you a commie? We're so people get so brainwashed, they don't think. So in the US, this whole very effective campaign that if you're not a hardcore capitalist who believes, if you believe in regulation, if you believe in corporate responsibility, if you believe in social democracy, you're a communist. Unbelievable. What a bunch of bullshit. So yeah, we live in a social democracy. We also live in capitalism. How can we use the levers of capitalism to create change? How can we leverage and foster and uphold the principles of a social democracy to make corporations accountable for their crimes? Well
said. You mentioned that AI models have largely been trained on scraped and stolen content. And I've been involved in the past year working with a Vancouver company called Ray, which is one of the largest companies that's developed a fair and transparent marketplace for compensating rights holders for AI training content. However, there's also a carbon cost to this training, right? So training a single large AI model can consume as much electricity as 120 Canadian homes in a year and emit as much CO2 as 110 cars on the road for a year. So, the question is, even if you're being compensated, even if you agree to participate in this kind of ecosystem, you may not be aware of the carbon costs. So what is the responsibility for disclosure or self-education around this? And Kevin, I will turn back to you again to ask on the entertainment side what you're doing about the carbon costs of AI filmmaking.
Right now, as I suggested earlier, we're a little bit helpless to the factors that we're given in terms of compute. And I will bang the drum more on incentivizing efficient compute. What I think is vitally important and perhaps could be a really effective policy procedure, and in fact, maybe even a tax credit incentive to create a kind of, fiscal accountability for efficient compute, is efficient computing reports, and therefore tax credit remuneration based on, what kind of models are you using to train? Are they a large behemoth like OpenAI model, or are they more of a vastly efficient model like some of the ones that ByteDance are putting out, where they run on pennies on the dollar, right? Which thank goodness there's a bit of a price per token kind of metric that we have out there, because that kind of gives us a bit of an idea of how much compute is being used for each of these operations. So if there's a policy structure in place that potentially, really incentivizes taking kind of like the tax credit situation that we're used to in film, and each year, you submit a report on a corporate level, not only are you saving money in real time on compute costs, but you're also being, it's almost like a carbon offset situation. It's a compute carbon offset. I think that could be a very powerful vessel for creating that kind of accountability and sustainability through fiscal responsibility, through policy responsibility. And I say that as a future projection because, the only things that we can really do at the moment is keep compute as local as possible and use smart models locally, have full control of the stack, and really look at the reports and using tools like Lionel introduced to us earlier on every sliver of compute that we're doing. It is time where we start to, instead of just ramming, tasks through massive amounts of compute, we look, we call it fix it in film, if at all possible, right? We take a look at, the projected compute costs and look at every nip and tuck efficiency. And before long, you're saving at least 20%, maybe even 80% if you do it wisely. So, it's creating new paradigms, and this is like wild new frontier where everybody's shoving things through on massive compute, on massive models, taking a step back and saying, hey, we can actually have a lot more control than we thought we had by just being conscientious about it.
Mm-hmm. I think about, let's say, closed media ecosystems that we all participate in. Netflix would be a really good example. And if we look at Netflix, just one streaming company, its annual carbon footprint is about 1.6 million tons of CO2, which is roughly equivalent to all the yearly emissions of the city of Vancouver. But now, with artificial intelligence, you have things like AI dubbing, you have AI personalization, you have AI optimization. So all of those things ratchet up the carbon footprint, and we are all part of that streaming ecosystem. So, we have the power to influence these companies with our pocketbooks, with how we lobby or complain, and to encourage them to do this kind of self-monitoring, or we will do it for them.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, I see you've got the bigger mic.
I don't have the bigger mic. But,
I want to re-include Amanda in the conversation as well.
I do want to blow this whole conversation up, actually, though, because I know there's a lot of questions from the audience, and I've got the first one, actually. I find my relationship with AI non-consensual. So you've talked a lot about choosing to be a part of this world, Catherine, or living in this kind of paradigm or whatever, but I'm just doing my best to keep up with the world changing around me or whatever. I'm just trying to figure out where to go from here. It came into my industry and kicked the fucking table over. So I don't feel like I really got a choice. My best choice is to host the conversation where I can look at the opportunities and critique the fucking stuff that's broke. And so anyway, that's in the form of a question.
I just want to piggyback off of Chris's sentiment. And, before I became, recently quite successful in AI filmmaking, I wasn't working for 2 years because of the paradigm shifts of Hollywood and also AI
rough
into
for you,
Hollywood as
Wizard.
well.
You came all the way to the breaking line, man.
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't embrace AI filmmaking as the holy grail of things, although there are many creative and opportunities out of it. It's a paradigm that a lot of us have had to wildly and vividly adapt to have a career still, basically.
Like spending our inheritance to retool ourselves to have a seat at the table in this new AI filmmaking world or whatever type thing. We're not just, I welcome you to throw to Amanda, but I'd like to, is anyone else here? I've seen lots of people taking notes. Alma? Yep, coming to you next. There's 5 over there. Is that Topo? Yeah. Fuck yeah, bro. Topo, you're next.
Hi guys, I really appreciate all your comments because I think they're tremendously important. I'm coming from the background as a computer scientist. I've been building AI systems since the early 90s. And Kevin brought a very important point with regards to, we got lazy. as developers, because back in the 90s, optimization was the key, because we didn't want to wait 3 hours for our models to run. So we were looking like minimizing compute power and so on. But then new processors came and made our life easy, and then we got lazy. I've seen models using algorithms that I developed in the early 90s, because they now can run very fast. Back then, we would have to wait 3 hours for them to be able to generate the output. So, like, I just wanted to, highlight that point, because it's super, super important that we need to be not lazy, right? Like, we have to be creative in the optimization. As software developers, we need to think again on how we are developing these models, so that we are not wasting power, that it's not all brute force, that we have to be better at how we do this, because our planet is going to die, if we don't take care of all of this.
I know. Can you imagine using the most expensive, most smart AI model in the world to make you a recipe?
I think when Geoffrey Hinton accepted his Nobel Peace Prize, did he not? I think it was that speech recently that he said, if empathy is not encoded, then we're doomed. And the paradox there is that AI is the core tool for next-gen warfare. It is the core tool for data surveillance and for militarization in all of its forms. Exactly. And it's tested on Palestinians. We know that. That's a fact. So how do we encode empathy when Elon Musk says that empathy is a weakness? And, Palantir, Peter Thiel, they're all about like dominance. So, for me, in the making of this new documentary, when I explore the intersection or the epicenter of AI data center expansion and water use, all of these issues are contained within. So we cannot disentangle the entertainment sector from militarization. It's all connected, and it is the core tool for this planet, which is in peril.
Yeah. That's really great points, Liz. But also I wanted to add a little bit more nuance to the conversation, which is that efficiency is not necessarily the same as sustainability. And those two should not be conflated. We also...
It's not you. I'm so sorry. Just hold it really nice and close to your mouth like that. Yeah.
I'll use this.
Do the same technique.
Okay. We also can't presume that optimization through AI is synonymous with sustainability. Like, I think that there's nuance there in terms of applying solutions. Again, is it fit for purpose? What is the actual objective? Are we even clear on the objective? Much like in terms of the various stages of filmmaking, not necessarily all levels of filmmaking should benefit from like AI interventions. There are some that's like, it's okay to not have AI applied to that. And more to the point, I said this in our previous panel. It's like, I just don't quite understand the reason why we're so obsessed with replacing ourselves. I don't understand that. Just the idea that, to Liz's point earlier, I think there are really incredible uses for AI, especially if it's like very specific use cases. I think where it becomes ethically problematic is when we're talking about using AI to replace human creativity and labor.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks to all of you for your thoughts. And so every time that there's a panel like this, I get really frustrated because I think we all know what needs to be done. Yet it seems like everything is still framed within this big umbrella of capitalism and of the discourse of Silicon Valley of democratization of technology. And it's a comment more than a question, and maybe you can comment on top of it. Just as Liz was saying, right, there are certain words now, like, even you, Liz, you said, I'm not a Luddite. Why not? There are certain words that, I am a Luddite, I am a socialist, and I think that we need to be able to say these things without fear. This idea of democratization, I think it's really dangerous. Silicon Valley has sold it to us as something good. I think there's a difference between democratization and democracy. Democratization, it's about participation. And if that's the case, then, the Egyptian pharaohs democratized pyramid building. Everyone participated. And tagging to what Chris was saying, I feel the same way. I feel like I have no option. When they say, everyone can participate. No, everyone has to participate. You have to be on social media. There's no option not to be on LinkedIn and some of these platforms. So, I guess the comment is an invitation of actually, let's step outside of those frameworks and maybe go to the root of the problem, which capitalism is at the end. And it has to change. When my students ask me, hey, Topo, what do we have to design? What's the best thing we can design? I always tell them, it's not an app, it's not a website, it's none of that. Design a new economic system. Because changing the incentives, when we talk about how can we monetize, the incentive of not using this, we are doing, it's insane. We are talking within a framework that has not served us. Let's not think about how can we monetize one thing or another. Yeah, so that's it.
Before you guys respond up there, you said, you want people to be able to be more courageous to, stand out and say their opinions or whatever. But you also said that we probably all feel the same way. And you just slid that under the radar. You're like, oh, we probably all know what needs to be done. That was your quote. You said, we all know what needs to be done. What do you think we all know needs to be done?
Less consumption, not infinite growth. Not everything has to be monetized. And so what needs to be done is a new economic system. This is not a technology problem. It's not even a political problem. It's an economic problem. Value system. Yeah.
Anyone on the stage want to? There's a bunch of hands about to spring up. Let's keep going. Oh, Sas.
Go for it. Thanks so much for everything. I really appreciate the conversation. Talking about regulation, and that's one of the levers that we can do to constrain AI and making sure that we don't overconsume. But I do think we also have to consider the fact that changing human behavior is very difficult. And the reality on the ground is changing that. And to your point, changing the system, that's a really big challenge. I'm an MBA student. We're talking a lot about innovation and entrepreneurship. Wondering if we can talk about the other lever of changing the climate crisis through innovation via AI and what opportunities there are there.
Yeah, I don't know if this mic's on. Yeah, okay. So I mentioned that we launched an ethical artificial intelligence accelerator fund, and the purpose of that was to accelerate startups that were looking at that very problem. So problems of sustainability, inclusion, access, and that kind of thing, and investing, perhaps in more circularity versus profit, and kind of combining interesting economic models with artificial intelligence and using AI as a tool for good. So if you want to take a look at that, there are a whole list of projects, the Community Safety and Wellness Accelerator. I'll just highlight one. It's a female-founded company called Areto Labs. They're Canadian, New Zealand based, and they've created a solution to detoxify social media. So it's used by athletes, leagues, celebrities, politicians that face a lot of online toxicity, which, as we know, can spill into real world fear and transgressions. And they're using AI to kind of dominate positive things on feeds and minimize negative things. And it's had a tremendous boost in the mental health of these athletes and others that are using this solution. So that would be an example. And their business model is very good and fair on top of that. So they're actually practicing what they preach, which has made it difficult for fundraising, which looks at always, the hockey stick and where, you're an MBA student, these very common metrics. So we also have to not only change what we make and do, but we have to change the business models that we're using as we go on this journey.
Okay, let's talk about changing business models for a second. So what role do we want to play in the AI economy here in British Columbia? Do we want to buy our tokens from San Francisco? Do we want to produce our tokens in hydro-powered, indigenous-owned data centers in British Columbia? Do we want to buy LNG-powered tokens from Alberta? Thorium. Sorry, what was another idea? Thorium. Oh, you're going to tell me some crypto shit, aren't you? Run. I'm open to, I want to put this on the table. So it's like, I got kids who live in BC. I want them to have jobs in the future. I want this economy to thrive. I want to go send them to university. So what part of the economy of the future do we want to play?
We've been talking a lot about efficiency saving. And as we all know, if we get... Yeah. No, it's not weird at all. But one side of the problem is obviously efficiency. That's the individual. We all know what we did with LEDs. We just got 10,000 more LEDs. And so that it allows us to do a lot more that way with the efficiencies. But on the other side is, where does the power come from? And that's a big conversation here in BC. Obviously, we've got hydro, and that has not necessarily been done in the best way. Locally, I haven't talked to one of the chiefs on the Site C dam. So I was also touring a mine up in northeast British Columbia, and I pointed and I said, "What's that mountain over there?" And he goes, "Oh, that's where we put all the thorium." It turns out thorium is everywhere there's coal, and it turns out thorium was decided way back in the day when they were developing nuclear weapons to say, "Yeah, I got you. You're talking rare earth minerals to develop power."
Okay. So I'm not going to cut you off. I'm going to make this a more inclusive conversation. So last week, Adrian Dix and David Eby took a lot of the energy that's produced in British Columbia and dedicated it to thorium, aluminum, rare earth minerals. They say the role we want to play in the future here in British Columbia is mining up the things that they need to build data centers in other places. This is what you're talking about, more or less.
Thorium is kind of like uranium, except it's a lot safer, a lot less damaging the environment, and doesn't require millions of years in order for it to become degraded. So basically, there's reports going way back all the way to like the early 1930s, 40s, 50s. And they actually built a megawatt thorium plant back in the 60s. It was highly successful, and the United States killed it.
Thank you. This is a very valuable contribution because it is another path. We could also just mine up the rocks that everybody else uses in their rare earth mineral Teslas and data centers or whatever. So it's like, what role do we want to play in the coming economy? Open-ended question. To the room, yeah. We got about 5 more minutes here, Let's take this all the way there.
So I want to stitch together a whole bunch of things that I've heard, because I still haven't heard what I wanted to ask, and stitch together behavior change, stitch together efficiency, stitch together how we change systems, and think about. And it was mentioned, so when you think about film cameras versus digital cameras, we used to have 24 slides of film to take pictures. Now that we have unlimited amounts of storage on our iPhone, we take many more pictures. And it goes towards the creative side. How do we think about, fix it in pre? Where's the design thinking involved in using technology to help us as humans be better humans, right? So we're building technology as a way to, it's often in our own image, but we're not using it in a way to help us become better humans. So this is the question to you guys. How do we use the most insane godlike technology that we have to help us change our own behavior so we become better humans at the same time as using less materials, taking less pictures, using less data, designing better algorithms? How do we do it?
And I want to present that as like a last comment from everybody, kind of like 30 seconds if you would like. His question is the same as everyone's in the room. So I agree with you. I'm sure many people agree about the concerns that you're identifying and the conflicts that arise inside us. So take a crack at it. We're not going to hold you to it. This is not, it might be on the permanent record, but how do we get there from here?
I guess to me, there's the premise is problematic for me from the jump, because when you're talking about being better humans, we can become better humans without technology. Go to therapy. Deal with your trauma. Can we get real about that? Like, for real. Like, if you don't have enough empathy, then what's wrong with you? Like, truly. Like.
But Kay, I've been to therapy. So let's take it to the next level.
Yeah, go.
AI can do those things for us. AI can do amazing things. It's a wonderful tool, and there are so many ways that we can use it. But it's just like anything. There has to be balance. We still have to be looking at how we're paying. And I would like to have a home. I would like to have a planet. I would like to have water and food and a future for our kids. That should be just as important as all of these benefits that we get from AI. We have to look at the perks of having a lovely home to live in, a lovely planet to live on, with all the resources that we have. We have to look at that as being just as valuable as everything that AI is bringing us. We don't need to give up one or the other. We just need to find a way to have balance, to be mindful of our consumption in every way. That's all.
And to your point, Chris, in terms of, folks who make an attempt to heal, the thing about healing is that it's not linear. It is not linear. It is a lifelong journey. There is no end to it. And what it takes is actually accountability. And that's the main thing that's missing in this whole, picture, that when we're looking at it, it's about transparency. It's about accountability. And it boils down to consent. It boils down to control and compensation.
Yes, heard, Kay. Thank you.
My tagline that I mentioned when I first started speaking is the question that I'll pose again. Is AI draining this world for another? And I would like to say as my sort of final words that we cannot lose sight or touch with the movement to protect this world, this planet, this water, these trees, this land, this earth, this air, and the animals, and the people. And it's an intersectional issue. And we're getting so pulled into these portals and devices and screens and games and ideas and colonizing space and killing people with AI, and it goes on and on. And I want to say, let's reinvigorate and not forget the movement, the human-based movement to protect this place.
Yes.
Yeah. Sure. I think this is a really interesting opportunity in a storytelling sense, in that these tools are here. There's no way to get around them at the moment. Like it's just here. It's a paradigm that's pervasive. There's something very punk rock about having something that's staring you in the face and using that tool in and of itself to tell the stories to create the change. So I think those of us, right? This paradigm is here. This paradox is here. Let's use all of our community, all of our voices, and all of our talents, and convene in this new frontier that is here, whether we want it or not. And it's clear that it's both. At the same time, we are in a time that is many more truths than we ever imagined. So let's use the tools that are here to tell stories that remind us exactly what we're here for, what we're fighting for, our families, our communities, our global village, and probably our galactic village if we look a little bit further out, right? So that's my take on it. It's like, punk rock, the aesthetic came to life because of the Xerox copying machine. You know, Xerox was a hideous, terrible company. Like, wow, look at their rap sheet. It's bad. That was just like a drop in the bucket compared to what we may have on our horizon. Let's use these tools to fuck it up, y'all.
Chris, you asked what role that we could play here as a community, as a city. And just want to remind everyone here that Vancouver is a global center for circularity and for the B Corp movement. So we already have these models that are capitalist busting right here at our doorstep. We have the talent in our city, and we also have a lot of AI savvy in this room. So maybe twinning those things, we will then find what our secret sauce is as this unique region. Thank you all so much.
Seriously. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Will you come up here and just kind of like come with me, take a little bow, let people clap? I actually believe in us. I believe in us a lot because we're having these types of conversations, right? Like this is a bunch of different people who don't exactly all think the same way. Amanda, thank you for being on your first panel and first talk ever, for sharing your story. And Kay, thanks for getting more people involved. Catherine, great vision to bring all this together. You broke through my no panels policy. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for all being a part of this. I'm really just trying to host a conversation that will elevate all of our capabilities so that we can be at the table when these decisions are made and be a part of the future conversation. So welcome to it. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you, guys.